Hello and welcome back to my channel, Britt's Book Club. If you're new here, then my name is Brittany and I love to talk about books. Today we're going to do another tier list. If you saw my last video, you know it was kind of like a tier ranking of my 2020 reads. Today's video is a tier ranking of some Sanderson heroines. So I was thinking to myself as I was trying to prep for doing more review videos of what might be something fun to talk about. And one of the things that I came upon was doing a tier ranking of some Sanderson characters. I've read a lot of Sanderson novels, and from a variety of his different stories and not just one series. So I thought this might be kind of fun, and to specifically focus on the female characters that he has in these novels, because in my opinion, he writes some of the best female characters that I've seen, especially when it comes to the fantasy genre. So with all of that being said, we're going to kind of dive in and do this tier list video of some of his heroines, female characters across his different stories. Okay, so our first character on our list is SPENSA. SPENSA from Skyward. So SPENSA is a 17-year-old protagonist. She wants to be a flight pilot like her father before her. She lives in this society where the fighter pilots are really respected, but everyone kind of has their own place. But her father has kind of, because of his actions, it has kind of made it more difficult for SPENSA to achieve her own goals. So it's very much an underdog story. It's very much about SPENSA proving herself to the flight academy and becoming a fighter pilot. I really liked SPENSA. I know some people have issues with her where she can grate on their nerves a little bit, especially initially, because she says a lot of grandiose, verbose things. But I love SPENSA. I thought SPENSA's story, I have not read Starsight yet, but I have only read Skyward, but I thought her story was so good. It was like Brandon Sanderson knew exactly what a 17-year-old girl thinks alike. You know, even with the ridiculousness of some of her personality traits, I definitely felt like he did a really good job of having her feel like a young girl. The next character is Sylpharina. Syl from the Stormlight Archive series. So I don't want to say too much about Syl, because even though I'm still reading Rhythm of War, Syl could be a little bit of a spoiler for people who may not have read Stormlight Archive. She's essentially what is called a spren, which is like very like creatures almost. Like the spren are almost the natural elements and emotions and things of like the pieces of the world come to life, essentially. And so Syl is a spren, and she kind of like SPENSA. She's a little childlike. She's very bubbly. I really like Syl. In fact, Syl is going to be our first character in the S tier. So put SPENSA in the A tier because I really like her character. I think she was really well written. But I put Syl in the A tier because Syl is just such a sweet character. It's hard to find anything to dislike about her. The next character is Risen. So Risen is another Stormlight Archive character. She appears in a lot of the interludes. She's actually one of the main characters in Dawnshard, the novella that was just released. Risen has a disability, and after reading Dawnshard, you know, I personally do not know and have not lived the life of someone like Risen, but I felt like Sanderson did. This is another situation where he just did such a good job of being so well researched and really able to put you in the shoes of someone who has gone through what Risen has gone through. And then Dawnshard was it was one of my favorite reads of the year, and Risen is the main character in it, and she is just so good. She is just such a likable character. So I'm going to also put her in A tier. Now I realize, I hope that I have some characters on here that I won't put in the lower tiers, because I almost don't know. I don't know. I just like so many of his characters. So the next character, I'm not sure if I'm going to say her name correctly or not, but it's Sireni or Sireni. She is actually from Elantris. Elantris was the first Sanderson novel that I ever read. It's also, coincidentally, his debut novel. The first published novel that he came out with. And Sireni is one of 3 point of view characters in that novel. The other 2 are both men, and one of them is like Serene's love interest and the prince, and the other one is like a church figure who is Serene's like direct opposition in the story of Elantris. And you know what, actually, I'm going to put her a little low. I'm going to put her in C for now until we see if there's any other people who maybe might knock her lower. Because I do like Sireni. Her chapters were okay. It's been a while since I read Elantris, so there's not too much that I remember about her, and that's kind of why I put her lower. It's because a lot of these other characters, even if I haven't read very much with them in it, they're still distinctive enough that I can remember some attributes of their personality. With Sireni, she's a little bit forgettable. And you know, I do remember her being a little annoying, which isn't necessarily a downside, because I do think that it is good when authors also write women like they're not perfect, because they're not. And so Sireni doesn't need to be perfect to be a good character. But that being said, I personally did not like her as much as some of these other ones. So we'll see. We might move her. Next up is Vin. Vin is the main protagonist of the Mistborn series, at least Era 1. I have not read Era 2, so there are not any Era 2 Mistborn characters on here. And I've only read the first book of Mistborn Era 1, so I don't have as much experience with Vin. I think she's cool, but I'm also going to put her in C, which may be a controversial opinion, because while I thought Vin was really cool, I really liked her story. It was very emotional, at least in book 1. I actually had a different character in book 1 that I liked more than Vin. And so for that reason, I'm just going to pop her down into C. C is like not a bad place to be. It just means that there were other characters I liked more, or they were forgettable, or, you know, kind of middle of the roads kind of place. The next character is Yazna. Yazna is also from the Stormlight Archive. There's a lot of Stormlight Archive characters on here because obviously that book series is longer and bigger than some of Sanderson's other series, so there's just more room for more characters from Stormlight Archive. It's also the series that I have definitely read. Like I said, I haven't watched or read too much of Mistborn, so there could be more Mistborn characters here if I were to do a part 2 to this video. But Yazna, she is a scholar, she's an atheist, she's kind of like no-nonsense kind of lady. I really like Yazna. I'm gonna pop her into A, although she might go up to S tier. We'll see. I really like Yazna. She's definitely not my favorite character in Stormlight Archive though, which is why I popped her in A. I think she's a very interesting character. I really like her. I really like her relationships with the other characters, specifically Shallan. I kind of like her character archetype. But, you know, there are some scenes that she's in where I'm just kind of like, I wish that she were not in them, perhaps. But so far, so good. Like, where I'm at in Rhythm of War right now, for instance, I really do like Yazna. I think she's done a lot of good things. But there was like a part with Shallan and Yazna, I think in Oathbringer, that I was just kind of like, I'm kind of over this. Next character is KHRISS. So KHRISS is actually an interesting character. She technically is a world hopper, and I won't say too much more about what that means, just in case you're not familiar with the Cosmere terms, but KHRISS is a world hopper. I have read volumes 1 and 2 of White Sand. White Sand is one of the first books that Brandon Sanderson wrote, and they recently turned it into 3 volumes of a graphic novel series. And so I've read the first 2 volumes. I have not read the 3rd volume, but KHRISS is a character in White Sand. And so I don't know too much about KHRISS. So we'll pop her here in C, and so we'll actually move Vin up to B, because I like Vin better than Sireni and KHRISS for sure. But KHRISS, I don't know too much about her, even having only read a little bit of White Sand. So I don't feel like there's much to say about her. I do know that she goes around and she catalogs and is actually the one who writes all of the Ars Arcanum, or whatever they're called, at the end of the Sanderson novels that are in the Cosmere. So she's got a lot of Cosmere importance. It's just I don't really know too much about her, or have too much of an opinion on her, let's say. Okay, so next is SHAI. So SHAI is in a short story / novella by Brandon Sanderson called The Emperor's Soul. It takes place in the same world system as Elantris, which was Brandon Sanderson's first published novel, like I already said. The Emperor's Soul, I'm gonna put SHAI in A. So SHAI is the main character of The Emperor's Soul. It's all about her. I don't think you get very many, if any, other perspectives. It's just SHAI's. And she is very kind of similar to RYSN. Like, there's not a whole lot about her because she is in this novella, so it's a shorter story and it's more focused. But what we do learn about SHAI is really, really good. I genuinely enjoy SHAI. I think that she is very interesting. The magic system that they use in The Emperor's Soul is very compelling, and she's got kind of this grit that you don't see in a lot of characters that I really enjoyed. Next up is Siri. So Siri is one of 2 characters that I have on this list that is from Warbreaker. Warbreaker is a currently standalone novel by Brandon Sanderson. It also takes place in the Cosmere. Siri is one of 2 princesses from Warbreaker. She is kind of reckless. She is a little rebellious. She kind of does what she wants to do. And she is the youngest child of this royal family. And she basically gets sent off to an arranged marriage that she has no preparation for. And I really, really like Siri. But I'm going to put her in B because although I really like Siri and I really like the story that in the journey that Siri undergoes in Warbreaker, I actually think her sister VIVENNA is more compelling and more interesting. But we'll get there in just a second. So Siri got put in B. My next character is Venly. So if you have not read up to Rhythm of War or even Oathbringer, then you may not know who Venly is. So I'm not going to say too much about Venly just in case it's a little bit of spoilers for you. But I don't really know how I feel about Venly at this point. So I'm going to put her in C. So I like her okay. I think she's all right. And again, I don't want to spoil anything, so I won't say too much about her. I don't know how I feel about her quite yet. And so that's why I'm putting her in C. So the next character is VIVENNA. So VIVENNA, like I said before, is also from Warbreaker, just like Siri. I like her better than Siri. She is the eldest princess, and she's the one who's supposed to do the arranged marriage, and then at the last minute she gets swapped. And she kind of undergoes a more interesting, more compelling journey than her sister. Relearning things that have been kind of ingrained in her since she was young. And she gets to play around with the magic system, which Siri does not. And she actually makes appearances in other book series by Brandon Sanderson, so you might want to be on a lookout for VIVENNA. And I really desperately want a Warbreaker sequel, if only so that I can see what happens to VIVENNA. So I'm going to put VIVENNA at the front of A. Okay, and then the last 3 characters are all Stormlight Archive characters. I didn't want to have it all be Stormlight, but that is what it kind of seems like has happened. So the next character is NAVANI. I'm going to go ahead and just put NAVANI in C. So I do like NAVANI. I think she's a really cool character. I like her well enough. I'm a little ambivalent about her as well, but there is some actions that she does which are actually being touched on now in Rhythm of War, where I'm reading, that I don't wholly agree with. I'm not a huge fan of that. She's also a scholar. She's actually Yazna's mother. But there's some morally questionable things that she does. And so, although I really do like her as a character, I kind of feel like she's one of those characters that you are kind of like, about. Right, next is Lift. So Lift is also from the Stormlight Archive. She's actually a younger character, so she's supposed to be a teenager, I believe, maybe a younger child. Somewhere in the preteen to early teen age, I believe. I love Lift. In fact, Lift is going to go up in S tier. And so I know that a lot of people don't like child characters. A lot of people don't like characters that are kind of supposed to be humorous. And Lift has both of these going against her. So there is a portion of the fandom that doesn't really like Lift, but I love her. I think she's great. I love the way that she talks. Like, of how Brandon Sanderson can write so many different characters that are so different from one another and still be like really good at doing that. So Lift gets an S tier, which leaves our last character as SHALLAN. So SHALLAN is kind of an interesting character for me because I like her. I really do like SHALLAN, but I also get irritated by her very frequently. We're gonna just put SHALLAN in B. And like I said, I didn't actually put anyone in the D rank, so I'll just move Sireni down at the last minute. And we can put her in D because I don't remember enough about her to really have an opinion. So this is where I will leave my tier ranking of Sanderson heroines. If there was a Sanderson heroine that I missed that you would like to know my opinion on, leave me a comment down below. I'll also have linked where all of these images came from. You should definitely go check out the artist because there's some really gorgeous Sanderson fan art out there. And of course, I would love to know your ranking of these characters. Were there some of my rankings that you kind of disagree with? Is there some reasoning about a specific character that you think maybe I would feel differently about them if you gave me your opinion on them? Well, just tell me. I'm not one of those people that feels like you should have an opinion on a character and then it never changes. I think that your opinion on characters is bound to change as you read more about them and you learn more about them. And I think Sanderson, kind of like how Robert Jordan is in The Wheel of Time, is pretty good at making your opinion of different characters kind of ebb and flow. So thank you so much for watching this video. Have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you in another video.